Admiral Kang Daehyun stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Unity, staring at the screens in front of him. He was 63 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. For 30 years he had been solving problems with words instead of weapons. That was how humans did things now. They talked. They negotiated. They apologized even when they were right. The galaxy knew humans as the courteous ones. Other species would argue and threaten each other, but humans always stayed calm. They always tried to find peaceful solutions. Some aliens thought this made humans weak. Admiral Kang did not care what they thought. Peace was more important than pride, but today was different. The communication officer turned to face him. Her name was Lieutenant Choi Yoonji, and she looked angry. She had every right to be. The message on her screen showed 3 human colonies under attack. New Seoul, Harmony Station, Jeonbuk Outpost. 47,000 people lived in those colonies, regular people with families and jobs and dreams. Admiral, the Vrexian ships are not responding to our hails, Choi said. Her voice was tight with control. They are ignoring all diplomatic channels. The Vrexians were a reptilian species with scales like armor and eyes like cold stones. Their empire had existed for thousands of years, built on conquest and fear. They respected strength. They laughed at kindness. Keep trying, Kang ordered. Send them our standard peace protocols. Offer to negotiate. Choi's jaw tightened, but she followed orders. She always did. That was the problem with good soldiers. They obeyed even when every instinct told them to fight back. Captain Lee Ji-won walked onto the bridge. She commanded the EDS Horizon, one of Earth's fastest defense ships. She was young for a captain, only 35, but she had graduated top of her class. Her ship was currently stationed near New Seoul, watching the attack happen in real time. Admiral, permission to engage the Vrexian raiders, Lee said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were clenched into fists. They just destroyed the hospital in New Seoul. There were children in that hospital. Kang felt something break inside his chest. Children. Always the children paid the price for adult wars. But he had his orders from Earth's parliament. Defensive positions only. No aggressive action. Keep trying to talk. Negative, Captain Lee, he said quietly. Hold your position. Protect civilian evacuation ships. Do not pursue the attackers. Lee's face went pale. For a moment, Kang thought she might refuse the order. She had lost her sister 5 years ago in a mining accident on New Seoul. She had family there. Friends. Understood, Admiral, Lee said finally. The word came out like broken glass. The attack lasted 4 hours. The Vrexians were efficient and brutal. They targeted population centers, not military installations. They wanted to hurt humans, not fight them. When they were done, they simply left. They jumped to faster than light speed and disappeared, leaving behind burning colonies and 47,000 dead. Dr. Park Min-ho arrived on the Unity 6 hours later. He was Earth's chief expert on alien psychology and culture. He had spent 20 years studying how different species thought and communicated. His job was to help humans understand aliens and avoid conflicts. Right now, he looked exhausted. The Vrexians see our diplomatic approach as weakness, Park explained to the senior officers. In their culture, strength is everything. They believe that any species willing to talk instead of fight is prey, not a threat. Then we need to make them understand we are not prey, Lieutenant Choi said. We need to show them what happens when they attack humans. No, Admiral Kang said firmly. We follow protocol. Earth's parliament will decide our response. We are not animals. We think before we act. But Earth's parliament took 3 days to make a decision. 3 days of debate and arguments and careful consideration. In that time, Earth's diplomats prepared a careful response. They offered to meet with the Vrexian leaders. They suggested neutral ground. They promised to listen to Vrexian concerns. The Vrexians sent a diplomatic team. 5 of their best negotiators traveled to the neutral meeting station. Earth's ambassador, a woman named Ambassador Kim Sora, waited for them with hope that talking could prevent more death. The Vrexians killed all 5 human diplomats within an hour of arrival. They recorded the executions. They broadcast the video on all frequencies, making sure every human colony could see it. The Vrexian Emperor appeared at the end of the broadcast. His voice was filled with contempt. Your weakness disgusts us, the Emperor said. You beg for peace when you should fight for survival. You are not worthy of the worlds you occupy. We will take them from you and you will do nothing but talk. Admiral Kang watched the broadcast alone in his quarters. He played it 3 times. Each time he felt something he had not felt in decades. It was not anger exactly. It was colder than anger. Harder. It was the feeling he remembered from history books about old Earth, from the time before humans decided to be diplomatic. It was the feeling his grandfather had described. The feeling that came before terrible things. Captain Lee found him there an hour later. She did not say anything at first. She just stood in the doorway, waiting. Finally, Kang spoke. "My grandfather fought in the last war," Kang said quietly, "before first contact with aliens. Before we decided to be peaceful. He never talked about it much, but I remember one thing he told me. He said that the worst thing about war was not the killing. It was how easy the killing became, how normal it felt after a while. I have never understood what he meant," Kang continued. "We spent 2 centuries making sure humans would never feel that way again. We taught our children that violence was always the wrong answer, that talking was always better than fighting." He turned to look at Lee. His eyes were very old. "But watching those diplomats die, I finally understand. My grandfather was not warning me about war. He was warning me about what happens when you are forced to become the thing you have been trying not to be." Lee stepped into the room. She looked at the frozen image on the screen showing Ambassador Kim's final moments. "What are we going to do, Admiral?" she asked. Kang did not answer immediately. He thought about 47,000 dead colonists. He thought about 5 murdered diplomats. He thought about 200 years of careful peace. He thought about his grandfather's warning. Then he reached for his communication terminal. "I am calling an emergency meeting with the Global Defense Council," he said. "And I am going to tell them something that has not been said in 200 years. "What is that?" Lee asked. Kang looked at her. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but absolutely certain. "That being courteous is a choice. And the Vrexians have just made us reconsider that choice." The elevator went down for 7 minutes. Captain Lee Ji-won counted every second. She had received the message 2 hours after Admiral Kang's meeting with the Global Defense Council. A simple order with coordinates that did not appear on any official map. "Report to Sublevel Omega beneath Global Command. Come alone." Lee had been to Global Command many times. She thought she knew. Every level of the massive complex built deep. Under the mountains of what used to be called Korea. She was wrong. The elevator doors opened to reveal a hallway that looked older than the rest of the facility. The walls were bare metal instead of the clean white panels used everywhere else. The lights were dimmer. Everything felt heavy, like the air itself carried weight. A man waited for her at the end of the hall. He was tall and thin, probably in his 50s, with sharp eyes that seemed to calculate everything they saw. He wore a simple black uniform with no rank markers. "I am Director Yoon Ha-jun," the man said. "Welcome to the archives, Captain Lee. Please follow me." "I was not aware there was an archives division," Lee said carefully. Director Yoon smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "That is by design. We preserve things that humanity decided to forget. Come. There is something you need to see." He led her through a series of locked doors, each requiring retinal scans and genetic verification. Finally, they entered a large room filled with screens and old equipment. Everything looked functional but ancient, like it had been maintained carefully for a very long time. Director Yoon touched a control panel. The main screen flickered to life, showing footage Lee had never seen before. It showed Earth, but not the Earth she knew. Cities burned. Mushroom clouds rose into the sky. Orbital platforms fired weapons that turned entire regions into glass. "What is this?" Lee asked, though part of her already knew. "This is the last war," Yoon said quietly. "The real history that we do not teach in schools. The truth about what humanity was before we met aliens," the footage continued. Lee saw weapons that should not exist. She saw soldiers using tactics that violated every rule of modern warfare. She saw death on a scale that made the Vrexian attacks look small. "How many died?" Lee whispered. 4.7 billion people, Yoon answered. Over 50 years, bioweapons, nuclear exchanges, orbital bombardment. Nations destroyed each other completely. Some regions are still toxic 200 years later. We nearly made Earth uninhabitable. The screen changed to show documents, treaties, agreements, secret pacts signed after the war ended. The survivors made a decision, Yoon continued. They agreed that humanity must never show this face to the galaxy. When we detected the first alien signals in 2187, our leaders created a new identity for our species. We would be peaceful, diplomatic. We would rewrite our military doctrine completely. All records of our true history were sealed in facilities like this one. We lied to ourselves, Lee said. It was not a question. We chose to be better, Yoon corrected. There is a difference. Every human child for 2 centuries has learned that we are naturally peaceful, that our ancestors always sought diplomatic solutions. It was not a lie. It was an aspiration. We became what we wanted to be, but we did not destroy our weapons, Lee observed. No, Yoon agreed. We did not. He led her deeper into the facility. They passed rooms filled with old military hardware, weapon systems from the last war preserved and maintained. Lee saw things that violated 17 different galactic treaties, things humanity had sworn never to use. This is just storage, Yoon said. The real secret is elsewhere. They took another elevator. This one went out instead of down. When the doors opened, Lee found herself looking at a view she had never expected. They were in a hidden observation deck somewhere in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Through the window, Lee saw ships. Dozens of them. They were massive, painted matte black, bristling with weapons that should not exist. These were not the clean, friendly-looking defense ships that humanity showed the galaxy. These were warships. Real warships. Built for one purpose only. The Shadow Fleet, Yoon said. 37 ships maintained in secret for 200 years. Each one is crewed by volunteers who take a vow of silence. They train constantly. They live here, in hidden facilities throughout the solar system. The galaxy does not know they exist. Lee stared at the ships. She recognized some of the designs from classified files she had clearance for, but she had thought those designs were theoretical. Academic exercises, not real ships waiting in the dark. Why are you showing me this? She asked. Because Admiral Kang recommended you for command of one of them, Yoon replied. The vote has passed. Protocol Omega has been activated. Protocol Omega, Lee repeated. What is that? Yoon pulled up another document on a small screen. Lee read it carefully. Her hands began to shake. Protocol Omega was Earth's true military doctrine, sealed since 2192. It laid out exactly what humanity would do if diplomacy failed completely. It required unanimous approval from all 7 continental directors. It had never been activated in 200 years until now. This is insane, Lee said. If we use these ships, if we show the galaxy what we really are, every species will turn against us. They will see us as monsters, perhaps, Yoon said calmly. But they will also understand that our courtesy was a choice, not a weakness. That we have been patient, not powerless. The Vrexians need to learn this lesson. So does the rest of the galaxy. He brought up more files. Lee saw modifications that had been made to every defense ship in Earth's fleet. Hidden compartments. Concealed weapons. Systems that could be activated with a single command code. Every peaceful-looking ship humanity had built was actually a warship in disguise. Your ship, the Horizon, is the same, Yoon explained. When Protocol Omega activates, panels will retract to reveal railgun batteries. Sensor arrays will fold back to show missile tubes. The ship's AI will switch from diplomatic protocols to combat mode. Every defense ship will transform simultaneously. Lee felt dizzy. She sat down in the nearest chair. Her whole understanding of human society was crumbling. They had all been living a lie. Or had they? Yoon was right. Humanity had chosen to be peaceful. They had genuinely tried for 2 centuries to be something better. But they had never forgotten how to be something worse. We have not been peaceful for 2 centuries, Captain, Yoon said softly. We have been patient. There is a difference. Peaceful means you cannot fight. Patient means you choose not to fight. The Vrexians have just ended our patience. What happens now? Lee asked. Now you meet your new crew, Yoon said. The volunteers from the Shadow Fleet program. Soldiers who have trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come. Men and women who understand what humanity really is. He led her to a briefing room where 50 people waited. They all wore the same black uniform as Yoon. Their faces showed experience and discipline. These were not young recruits. These were professionals who had dedicated their lives to preparing for this moment. A woman stepped forward. She was shorter than Lee, but carried herself like someone who had seen combat. Her name tag read Colonel Nam Jisoo. Captain Lee, Colonel Nam said. I served in the Outer Rim conflicts, the ones humanity never admits to having. I have been waiting 20 years for this day. We all have. Lee looked at the assembled crew. These people had lived in secret, training for a war that might never happen, keeping humanity's true capability hidden from the galaxy. They had sacrificed normal lives to maintain the illusion of human weakness, and now that illusion was about to shatter. When do we begin? Lee asked. Director Yoon checked his terminal. In 6 hours, Admiral Kang will broadcast a message to the Vrexian Empire and every other species in the galaxy. They will have 72 hours to comply with our demands. If they do not, the Shadow Fleet launches, and if they do comply, Lee asked. Yoon's smile was cold. Then the galaxy will never know how close they came to seeing what humanity really is. But somehow, Captain, I do not think the Vrexians will be wise enough to withdraw. Lee looked out at the Shadow Fleet again. Those dark ships waiting in the silence of space. Ships built to remind the galaxy that humans had not forgotten how to fight. They had just been choosing not to until now. The emergency session of Earth's Parliament lasted 19 hours. Representatives from every continent and colony argued, debated, and shouted at each other. Some wanted to continue diplomatic efforts. Some wanted immediate military action. Most were simply terrified of what might happen if humanity showed its true face to the galaxy. Then the Vrexians made everyone's decision easier. They sent a message demanding that Earth surrender 12 colonies within 3 days. The colonies included some of humanity's oldest settlements outside of Sol system. Millions of people lived there. The Vrexian Emperor appeared on every screen to deliver the ultimatum personally. You have 3 days to evacuate these worlds, the Emperor said. His reptilian features showed what might have been amusement. After that, we will take them by force. Any humans who remain will be sold as slaves. This is your final warning. Accept our generosity or face complete extermination. The Parliament vote was still deadlocked. 3 days was not much time, but some representatives insisted there must be a way to negotiate. Others argued for evacuation and retreat. The debate went in circles. Then the Vrexians began their invasion of New Busan. New Busan was an agricultural world. 8 million people lived there, growing food for dozens of other colonies. It had no military value, no strategic importance. The Vrexians chose it specifically because they knew it would hurt. They broadcast the invasion live. Every human colony, every Earth citizen, could watch as Vrexian troops landed and began systematically destroying the farming communities. But they did not just kill. They took their time. They tortured civilians for entertainment. They made sure the cameras captured everything. In the Parliament chambers, representatives watched in horror as a Vrexian soldier grabbed a child. The soldier looked directly at the camera and laughed. Then the screen went dark. The soldiers had destroyed the broadcast equipment after making their point. The vote happened 5 minutes later. 6 continental directors voted yes. 1 voted no. Protocol Omega was activated. Admiral Kang received the authorization codes in his private quarters. His hands did not shake as he entered them into the secure terminal. He had made his peace with this decision during the long debate. The Vrexians had left humanity no choice. Dr. Park Min-ho helped him compose the message. They worked together for 2 hours, choosing every word carefully. This message would define how the galaxy saw humanity for centuries to come. It needed to be perfect. When they finished, Kang reviewed it one final time. He thought about his grandfather, about the last war, about 200 years of careful peace, about what humanity had tried so hard to leave behind. Then he pressed the button to begin recording. The message would be broadcast on all frequencies to every species in the known galaxy. There would be no hiding from this, no taking it back. Once Kang spoke these words, everything would change. To the Vrexian Empire and all species who are watching, Kang began. His voice was calm, steady. For 200 years, humanity has chosen diplomacy over violence. We have apologized when we were wronged. We have negotiated when we were attacked. We have shown restraint when we had every right to respond with overwhelming force. He paused, looking directly into the camera. You have mistaken our courtesy for weakness. You have mistaken our patience for cowardice. This ends now. The recording showed clips from the last war, just 30 seconds of footage. Cities burning, orbital weapons firing. The kind of destruction that made the current conflict look small. Kang had insisted on including it. The galaxy needed to understand what humanity was capable of. To the Vrexian leadership, Kang continued. You have 72 hours to comply with the following demands. Withdraw from all human territories. Release all prisoners unharmed. Present your military leadership for trial on charges of war crimes. If you comply, this conflict ends with no further bloodshed. Another pause. Longer this time. If you do not comply, we will remind you why our ancestors were so eager to become peaceful. We will show you what we have been hiding for 2 centuries. We will demonstrate exactly what humanity is capable of when we stop being courteous. Kang's expression was harder now. Colder. This is not a threat. This is a historical inevitability. You have awakened something we spent 200 years trying to bury. You will not like what you find. The recording ended. Kang sat in silence for a moment, then authorized the broadcast. Within seconds, the message was transmitted across every communication network in known space. The galaxy's reaction was immediate. 17 allied species recalled their ambassadors from Earth within the first hour. The Galactic Council held an emergency session, demanding explanations. Archaeological teams from dozens of species began frantically searching for evidence of the last war that humanity had carefully hidden. They found it. The truth had been buried but not destroyed. Within days, other species were broadcasting their own footage of old Earth, evidence of the massive war. The billions dead, the weapons that should have destroyed the planet completely. The friendly, peaceful humans that everyone had known suddenly looked very different. Every diplomatic gesture now seemed calculated. Every peaceful response now looked like a choice, not a limitation. Species that had dismissed humanity as weak began to reassess their entire relationship with Earth. But the Vrexians remained defiant. The Emperor broadcast his response 12 hours after receiving Kang's message. He was laughing. "We have reviewed your ancient war," the Emperor said with obvious contempt. "Your primitive weapons are no match for our modern empire. Those battles happened 200 years ago with outdated technology. You have grown soft. You have forgotten how to fight. You will kneel before us or you will burn." The Vrexian fleet actually increased their attacks. More colonies. More civilian targets. They were making a point, showing the galaxy that they were not afraid of humanity's threats. On New Busan, the torture continued. The Vrexians made sure everyone could hear the screams. Admiral Kang watched the countdown timer on his screen. 72 hours. 3 days for the Vrexians to make the smart choice. To understand that humanity's warning was not empty, but he knew they would not withdraw. He had studied their psychology with Dr. Park. The Vrexians believed that strength was the only language worth speaking. They would see withdrawal as weakness. They would rather die than appear cowardly. So humanity would give them death. Captain Lee reported to her ship 18 hours before the deadline expired. The horizon looked different now. The transformation had already begun. Panels had retracted to show weapons. The peaceful white paint had been replaced with matte black. The ship's friendly, curved design now looked predatory. Lieutenant Choi was already at her weapons station. She looked relieved to finally be allowed to do her job properly. Colonel Nam stood beside her, reviewing tactical displays. The ship's AI greeted Lee with a different voice. Gone was the friendly, apologetic tone. Now it spoke with crisp military efficiency. "All systems ready, Captain. Shadow Fleet is standing by for your command." Lee took her seat on the bridge. Around her, the new crew moved with practiced efficiency. These were not the uncertain diplomats who usually crewed human ships. These were soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Across the solar system, 36 other ships were doing the same. The Shadow Fleet emerged from hiding, ships that had waited 200 years in the dark between the planets, ships that the galaxy had never seen. Every human defense ship in the fleet transformed simultaneously. Hundreds of vessels that had looked peaceful and friendly suddenly bristled with weapons. The change was visible on every sensor in known space. Species watching from their own territories saw humanity's fleet reveal its true nature. The Galactic Council sent desperate messages. "Please reconsider. There must be another way. Do not do this." Admiral Kang ignored them all. He was watching the countdown timer, watching the Vrexian fleet position itself for another attack on human colonies. The deadline expired at exactly midnight, Earth Standard Time. The Vrexians had not withdrawn, had not released any prisoners, had not stopped their attacks. Kang took a deep breath. He thought one final time about his grandfather's warning. about 200 years of peace, about the choice humanity had made to be something better. Then he gave the order that would change everything. All ships, he said quietly. Execute Protocol Omega. Show them what we really are. The Shadow Fleet did not attack the Vrexian homeworld. They did not target military shipyards or supply depots. Captain Lee watched her tactical display as Admiral Kang transmitted the coordinates for their first strike. When she saw the target, she understood immediately what humanity was doing. They were going after the Vrexian Military Academy on Vrexus Prime. The academy was where the Empire trained its officer corps, where the Emperor's own children studied, where future Vrexian leaders learned to wage war. It was not just a military target. It was a symbol. Destroying it would prove that nothing was safe from human reach. All ships, jump in 3 minutes. Admiral Kang's voice came through the communication system. Remember your training. Precision over destruction. We are not monsters. We are soldiers. Lee looked at her crew. Colonel Nam was checking weapon systems. Lieutenant Choi had her hands steady on the targeting controls. Every person on the bridge was focused and ready. Jumping in 10 seconds, the AI announced. The universe twisted. Lee felt the familiar sensation of faster-than-light travel, like reality itself was bending around the ship. Then they were there, emerging from jump space directly above Vrexus Prime. 37 ships appeared simultaneously. The Vrexian defense systems immediately activated, but they were too slow. Humanity had studied their tactics for decades. Dr. Park had provided detailed psychological profiles. The humans knew exactly where every defense would be positioned. Weapons free, Lee ordered. Execute Strike Pattern Alpha, the Horizon fired, not the loud dramatic weapons from entertainment videos. Real military systems were quiet and efficient. Railgun rounds moved at incredible speeds. Missiles launched with precision guidance. Every shot was calculated to minimize waste and maximize effect. Lieutenant Choi's targeting was perfect. Each shot hit exactly where it was supposed to. The Academy's main buildings collapsed in sequence. Training facilities destroyed. Command centers eliminated, all within 5 minutes. But the city around the Academy remained untouched. The hospital just 3 kilometers away was undamaged. The residential areas showed no signs of attack. Humanity was demonstrating something the Vrexians had never understood. The difference between precision and brutality. Colonel Nam monitored the damage reports. The Emperor's eldest son had been in the Academy when it was destroyed. The Vrexian leadership would receive that news within minutes. 17 minutes after arriving, the human fleet jumped away, 0 casualties on the human side. The Academy was completely destroyed, but civilian infrastructure remained intact. Humanity had even broadcast medical aid frequencies before leaving, offering help to anyone injured in the attack. The message was clear. We can destroy what we choose to destroy. We can be as precise or as brutal as we want. The choice is ours. The Vrexian response came 6 hours later. Their fleet mobilized to defend their core worlds. The Emperor declared total war against humanity. He promised that Earth itself would burn, but his voice sounded different now. Less confident, more angry. The humans had hurt his pride by killing his son. More importantly, they had proven that Vrexian defenses could not stop them. Humanity's second strike came 12 hours later. This time they hit the Vrexian communication network. Not the military channels. Not the civilian networks either. They specifically targeted the propaganda systems that the Empire used to control its population. Captain Lee led a small team of ships on this mission. They appeared in 3 different locations simultaneously, destroying relay stations with surgical precision. Within an hour, the Vrexian government had lost its primary tool for controlling public opinion. Dr. Park broadcast a message immediately after. He spoke in the Vrexian language, explaining exactly what humanity had done and why. He detailed the military doctrine behind each strike. He showed the Vrexian population that their empire had attacked peaceful neighbors and received a measured, professional response. It was psychological warfare, making the Vrexians understand that humans were not reacting with emotion. They were executing a careful plan. Every strike was calculated. Every target chosen for maximum impact with minimum collateral damage. The third strike happened 24 hours later. This time humanity targeted 17 Vrexian military shipyards. But they did not destroy the facilities completely. They disabled them. destroyed the weapons manufacturing areas, left the structural framework intact, even made sure to broadcast warnings so workers could evacuate. 0 worker casualties. 17 shipyards rendered useless for military production. The Vrexian military lost years of ship construction in a single day. Lieutenant Choi was becoming frighteningly efficient at her job. She could calculate strike patterns in her head, could predict defense responses before they happened. Admiral Kang had noticed it too. He pulled Lee aside after one mission. "Watch your weapons, officer," Kang said quietly. "She is very good at this. Maybe too good. Make sure she remembers why we fight. We are not becoming what the Vrexians are. We are showing them what professional soldiers look like." Lee understood. There was a difference between being effective and being cruel. Humanity walked a dangerous line. They had to be devastating enough to win quickly, but controlled enough to remain who they claimed to be. The 4th strike targeted the Vrexian Senate building, but humanity waited until the building was empty. They monitored it for 3 days, timing their attack for when no senators would be inside. Then they destroyed it completely. After the building fell, Dr. Park broadcast the surveillance footage. He showed the galaxy that humans had waited, that they could have killed the Vrexian leadership but chose not to, that every act of violence was carefully controlled. The Vrexian military began to show cracks, not from destruction but from fear. They had never faced an enemy like this, an enemy that could strike anywhere, anytime with perfect precision. An enemy that seemed to understand Vrexian psychology better than the Vrexians themselves. 3 weeks into the campaign, reports started coming from Vrexian worlds. Military units refusing orders, officers questioning the Emperor's decisions, citizens demanding to know why their leaders had attacked humans in the first place. The Vrexian Empire was not collapsing from military defeat. It was collapsing from realization. They had attacked what they thought was prey. Instead, they had awakened a predator that had been deliberately sleeping. Captain Lee sat in her quarters one night, reviewing the mission logs. They had executed 47 different strikes, destroyed or disabled hundreds of military targets. The Vrexian military was in chaos, but the number that stuck in her mind was different. 0 civilian casualties from human actions, not one. Humanity had waged war with such precision that innocent Vrexians were safer during the conflict than before it started. Colonel Nam found her there. The older soldier sat down without asking. "You are wondering if we are the good guys," Nam said. It was not a question. Lee nodded slowly. "We are very good at killing. We have systems that the Vrexians cannot match. We strike with a precision that terrifies them. How is that different from what they did to us?" Nam pulled up footage from New Busan. The colony the Vrexians had attacked. The civilians they had tortured for entertainment. The children they had murdered on live broadcast. "This is the difference," Nam said. "They killed because they enjoyed it. We kill because it is necessary to stop them. They targeted civilians. We target military infrastructure. They wanted to create fear. We want to create peace." She closed the footage. Her expression was hard. "The Vrexians thought we were weak because we tried to talk first. Now they are learning the truth. We talked first because we know exactly how much damage we can cause. We were giving them a chance to avoid this. They refused to take it." Lee thought about that for a long time after Nam left. About the difference between strength and cruelty. About choosing when to fight instead of fighting because you could not stop yourself. On the 4th week, the Vrexian Emperor finally sent a message requesting a meeting. Not demanding, requesting. The tone had changed completely. Admiral Kang reviewed the request with his senior staff. "This is what we wanted, a negotiated end, but we must be careful. They could be planning something." Dr. Park analyzed the Emperor's language patterns, his body language in the video message, his psychological profile. "He is genuinely defeated," Park concluded. "Not just militarily, psychologically. He finally understands what we are. He wants this to end before we show the galaxy anything worse." Admiral Kang authorized the meeting, but he did it with one condition. The talks would happen on neutral ground, and the Shadow Fleet would remain on full alert. If the Vrexians tried anything, humanity would finish what they had started. Trust, but verify. It was an old Earth saying, and humanity had learned it the hard way. The meeting took place on Station Meridian, a neutral facility operated by the Galactic Council. Dozens of species sent observers. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when humanity and the Vrexian Empire finally sat down to talk. Admiral Kang arrived with a small delegation. Dr. Park came as cultural advisor. Captain Lee commanded the security detail. Lieutenant Choi and Colonel Nam waited aboard the Horizon, weapons ready in case diplomacy failed again. The Vrexian Emperor entered the conference room with his remaining military advisors. He looked different than in his broadcasts, smaller somehow, less confident. His scales seemed duller. His eyes showed something that Vrexians rarely displayed. Fear. The Emperor sat across from Kang. For a long moment, neither spoke. The room was silent except for the quiet hum of recording equipment. This meeting would be broadcast to every species in the galaxy. History was being made. Finally, the Emperor spoke. His voice was quiet, nothing like the arrogant tone from before. "I must know something before we negotiate," the Emperor said. "Why did you not do this 200 years ago? When you first joined the galaxy? Why pretend to be weak?" Admiral Kang considered the question. Everyone watching wanted the same answer. Why had humanity hidden its true nature for so long? Because we looked at what we were capable of and were horrified, Kang said simply. We killed 4.7 billion of our own people in 50 years. We nearly destroyed our own world. We looked at ourselves and saw monsters, so we made a choice. We would become something better. He leaned forward slightly. We wanted to prove that strength does not require violence. That power does not require conquest. For 2 centuries we succeeded. We showed the galaxy that humanity could be trusted, that we were more than our worst instincts. We genuinely tried to be peaceful. The Emperor looked down at his hands. And then we attacked you. We forced you to remember what you had been trying to forget. Yes, Kang said. You did. The negotiations lasted 12 hours. The terms were surprisingly simple. The Vrexian military would reduce to defensive forces only. All human prisoners would be released with full medical care and compensation. The Vrexian Empire would establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to acknowledge their crimes. Most importantly, Vrexian children would be taught the real history of the conflict, including how humanity had tried to avoid war. Earth demanded no territory, no tribute, no subjugation. They wanted acknowledgement and change. Nothing more. The Emperor agreed to everything. But he had one question left. How did you achieve such precision? The Emperor asked. Such control? We have been a military empire for thousands of years, yet your forces defeated us in weeks with minimal casualties. How Captain Lee answered this time. She had been quiet through most of the negotiations. But this question was for soldiers, not diplomats. We never stopped training, Lee explained. Every diplomatic officer in our fleet has full military qualifications. Every research station can become a military base within hours. Every civilian ship has weapon mounts ready to activate. We spent 200 years building the most capable military in the galaxy, while convincing everyone we were peaceful. She stood and walked to the window overlooking space. The Shadow Fleet was visible in the distance. Dark ships against the stars. We learned from our last war, Lee continued. The real strength is not in how much you can destroy. It is in how much you can protect. We trained to be so effective that wars would end quickly, with minimal bloodshed, because we understand what prolonged conflict costs. Dr. Park added his perspective. In human culture, the strongest warriors are those who choose when not to fight. We value restraint more than aggression, control more than chaos. You saw this as weakness. It was actually the most dangerous thing about us. The Emperor absorbed this information slowly. His entire understanding of strength had been challenged. The Vrexian Empire had been built on conquest and fear. Humanity had shown him a different kind of power. The power to choose peace until peace was no longer possible. The treaty was signed 8 hours later. The Vrexian Empire would begin its withdrawal immediately. Human prisoners were already being released. The war was over, but the galaxy had changed forever. 6 months after the treaty, Captain Lee stood on the observation deck of her new flagship. She had been promoted to admiral. Her ship was named Courteou's End, a reminder that human kindness was always a choice, not a limitation. The galaxy looked different now. 36 species had requested military training from Earth, not to learn how to conquer, to learn humanity's doctrine of overwhelming precision. They wanted to understand how to be strong without being cruel. The Galactic Council had rewritten its entire charter. They now included something called the Kang Principles, the idea that true power lies in restraint, that the strongest civilizations are those that choose when not to fight. Admiral Kang had retired to teach at Earth's new interspecies military academy. Students from dozens of worlds came to learn from him, to understand how humanity had maintained peace for so long, and how they had ended a war so quickly when peace became impossible. Dr. Park published a paper that became required reading in every alien military school. It was called Why Humanity Apologizes Before Destroying You. It explained that human courtesy was not naivety. It was the careful management of beings who knew exactly how dangerous they could be. Lieutenant Choi, now a commander, taught precision targeting at the academy. She showed other species how to wage war with minimal casualties, how to end conflicts quickly without becoming monsters in the process. Colonel Nam continued to serve in the Shadow Fleet. The fleet was no longer secret. The ships patrolled human space openly, painted in the colors of old Earth's war fleets. But they never fired unless fired upon. They never threatened unless provoked. They existed as a reminder, a promise and a warning. Humanity tried to be better, and they would continue being courteous for as long as the galaxy allowed them to be. Admiral Lee visited New Busan on the anniversary of the Rexian attack. The colony had been rebuilt. 8 million people now lived there again, growing food, raising families, living normal lives. A memorial stood in the center of the main settlement. It listed the names of everyone who had died in the attack, thousands of names carved in stone. Above them, the message that had changed everything. Stop attacking or we stop pretending to be courteous. Lee stood before the memorial with Colonel Nam and Commander Choi. They came here every year. To remember. To honor the dead. To remind themselves why they fought. A young Vrexian approached them. She wore a student uniform from the Reconciliation Program. Her empire now sent young people to learn about the war, to understand what their leaders had done, to make sure it never happened again. Admiral Lee, the student said nervously, "May I ask you something?" "Of course," Lee replied. "Do you regret showing the galaxy your true strength?" The student asked. "Would it have been better if everyone continued to think humans were naturally peaceful?" Lee looked at the names on the memorial. Thousands of people who died because the Vrexians thought humanity was weak. She thought about the war, about the Shadow Fleet emerging from hiding, about everything that had changed. "We regret that we had to," Lee said finally. "But we do not regret being capable of it. Our ancestors learned that peace is not the absence of capability. It is the choice not to use that capability. The galaxy needed to learn that our courtesy was a gift, not a limitation. Now they know." She turned to face the young Vrexian, "and they are safer for knowing. Because now when humanity says we want peace, everyone understands what that means. We want peace. We will work for peace. But we are capable of war, and that makes our choice to be peaceful much more meaningful." The student considered this, then asked one more question. "Will humanity ever go back to pretending?" Lee smiled. It was a sad expression, full of understanding. "We never were pretending," Lee said. "We genuinely tried to be better than our history. We spent 2 centuries building a peaceful civilization. We raised our children to believe in diplomacy. We made ourselves into something we could be proud of." She looked up at the stars, at the darkness between worlds where the Shadow Fleet waited, always ready, always hoping they would never be needed. But now the galaxy knows the truth. We are not peaceful because we cannot fight. We are peaceful because we choose to be, and that makes all the difference. Commander Choi spoke up. She rarely talked about philosophy. She was a soldier, but even she understood what had changed. "Before the war, species saw us as harmless," Choi said. "They thought our kindness was weakness. Now they understand. Kindness from the weak is all they can offer. Kindness from the strong is a choice, a gift. We gave the galaxy 200 years of peace because we wanted to, not because we had to." Colonel Nam nodded. "And if anyone ever forgets that lesson, the Shadow Fleet will remind them. We are not the monsters from our past. But we remember what those monsters could do, and we can become them again if we must." The young Vrexian student stood in silence for a moment, processing everything. Finally, she bowed deeply. The Vrexian gesture of respect. "Thank you for teaching my people this lesson without destroying us completely," she said. "You could have. We deserved it. But you showed restraint even in war." Lee returned the bow. "That is who we are. We are not perfect. We are not saints. But we try.